This is Joe Smith from the Midwest Football Podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It all helps us grow our show. Look for our full show, too, anywhere you find podcasts. Links below.
I'd be very boring as a GM. I would just throw tons of resources at the defensive line. I think you can go 8 deep, and it doesn't hurt because teams wear down in the second half because it's not just because they get tired. It's also because offensive line get used to seeing the same moves over and over again. So if you can throw different style defensive ends and tackles at these guys, it keeps them guessing. It takes longer for them to adapt to the pass rush. We're seeing in the Tom Brady era, the way to get to him was to get him off his spot. Don't let him step up like an Aaron Donald rushing up the middle. And I think that's why outside of the top prospect in the draft is Will Anderson, defensive end. But after that, I think the two best guys that I would like to see fall to number 9 at Chicago would be obviously Jalen Carter, who had his alleged off-field issues, but it sounds like those might be resolved, so he might not be falling anymore. But he can get pressure up the middle. And the other guy was the Pitt defensive tackle, Kalijah Cansey. He can shoot the gap. He might be a little small, but I don't mind that because you need him on third down. You don't necessarily need to put him out there to stop the run. You can find a big defensive tackle run stuffer anywhere late in the draft, bargain on free agency. I believe the Bears got 2 of them this year, adults in the room that can slow a run. If you bring in Kalijah Cansey, he can rush the passer up the middle and really be a disruptor. And that's why those 2 defensive tackles are huge, because afterwards it drops off to run stuffers.
Just look at the success that the Eagles had on the butt push play, and that you got to have somebody you can throw into the middle of that defensive line when and everybody else in the stadium knows that the run is coming.
And that's why even then, I don't want to shortchange the big boys, the big boys, because they can be on third down and 1 or goal line situations. And you might want to run out 3 defensive tackles in these situations, And then in other situations, you might want to kick out 4 pass rushers, like the Giants in the 2007 Super Bowl, where they would just kick their defensive ends into tackles and just blitz the gaps and bring in 2 more pass rushers. This year with the outside, edge rush, outside of Will Anderson, there's a lot of good players, but it's a lot of depth because you have the small guys. You're seeing more and more undersized pass rushers, 240-pound guys with bend that can get after a quarterback because you don't need your defensive ends to play 3 downs every time. In fact, it's almost dumb because they wear down. You want to have a diverse set of skill sets when it comes to your defensive end and your defensive tackles. And to me, that's why it's more valuable than it ever used to be. And a similar cornerbacks are like that, where you might be running out 3 or 4 cornerbacks as your base set, just because so many people run 3 and 4 receiver sets, which also make linebackers less valuable in general because you don't see them as much. But even the linebackers that do play, it takes them longer to develop because they're no longer a see ball, hit ball type guy that they were 20 years ago. That's primary job was to run stuff. Now their job, like a Fred Warner or Luke Kuechly, they have to get the whole defense on the same page. They got crossing routes, they got jet sweeps, they got motion, they got guys coming all the way across, and they still have to honor the run gap assignments. And to me, even though linebackers have been devalued the way running backs are, I think the top linebackers are more valuable than ever, like Fred Warner for the Niners.
I'd agree with you there. I mean, at the end of the day, you still need somebody to be the supercomputer to run your defense, and that person is still almost always the middle linebacker. The teams that are getting confused are usually the ones that don't have one of those really great linebackers to keep everybody sort of organized as the quarterback of the defense.
And, we talked about, the skill set diversity of receivers and how you can find more and more uses for them. It also makes more cornerbacks useful because you can have little slot guys that match up with, like guys like Julian Edelman. You can have the big traditional Peanut Tillman type guys, like the Legion of Boom in Seattle had the big 6'3" cornerbacks that could match up with DeAndre Hopkins, like Jalen Ramsey and stuff. And I know he wasn't Seattle. I just kind of.
Yeah, that was when the national defense of the NFL was bad cover 2 man press.
That's true. Well, yeah, exactly. And then they went more cover three, but you know, but it's still good to have multiple cornerbacks that you can count on to match up with different receivers, whether you're in the zone or man to man. You want to at least let them think you can go man to man and then maybe switch it up. But when you do go man to man, you want to be able to match up. You don't want to just have a point guard guarding a power forward out, out there and just letting a tight end post up on your little guy in the red zone. It's all that makes it more important because the better your defense is and the deeper it is, you ask less on your rookie contract quarterback when you're trying to compete for a Super Bowl.
Right. The nice thing about the defensive line is they're usually ready to contribute, if not right away, then by the end of their first year. So they match up nicely with the championship window that a team is trying to develop. A cornerback or one of those supercomputer linebackers, they're going to need some time because they're going to have to figure out how to read a route tree, and they have to have the physical tools to be able to do everything that they need, the mental tools to be able to not single-handedly get called for 17 pass interferences in a row or be the guy that's chasing the play 5 steps behind. But yeah, the defense is a hugely important part of the puzzle because if you've got a bad defense, then you better be a top 3 to 5 offense or you have no chance when you start playing the big boys in the playoffs.
Hey, let's be honest though. From a fantasy football perspective, we want our quarterbacks and receivers to be on teams with bad defense. Just keep them slinging, keep piling up the fantasy points. But as a fan, it's a little stressful.